Hi, I'm Patricia Allingham Carlson, and this is an end-to-end video of my painting Orange Poppy 2. As a flower-loving gardener, I finally succeeded in growing a poppy plant, and I just love the flowers. This is part 1 of the series, and I'm actually starting out with a destroyed block of Arches paper, one of my favorite papers to work on. A dog had gotten hold of it, and I love the dog, but I didn't love what it did to the paper. So you'll see me salvaging what I can from the paper into 2 little pieces of about 7 by 5 inches. I start out my sketch with my brush using a light colored paint because sometimes it's just fun to sketch with your brush and it feels very free to me. I lay out the work petal by petal, starting with the bottom petals first. I'm working with the folds of the poppy, the lights, and I'm doing a lot of blending with water to soften the effects. I hope you'll give my series a like and subscribe. Now let's paint. Beginning my painting Orange Poppies 2. I had an unfortunate run-in with a dog who decided to chew up some very nice Arches paper. I'm not one to waste something. So I took this paper and decided to trim it down into the biggest portions I could get, which were 5 by 7. Then I went outside and picked a couple of flowers and decided to start with the poppy. I love poppies. They have a wonderful, unique, crinkled up petal structure. One of the things I find rather freeing is to sketch with watercolor rather than with pencil. Since I use the brush so much, I have a pretty good time doing this and just sketching out lightly with light colors. If I use the light colors and make a mistake, I can take them off with water and a little bit of brush work and come in and correct. So here I'm using a mixture of orange and yellow to lightly sketch out the outlines of the flower. Some of the folds in the flower were very important to the structure, so I sketched in some of the folds as well. Painting a flower can use a little bit less of a structured approach than painting, say, a human face or an animal face or a building with perspective, because flowers sort of go wherever they want to go, and you're free to interpret them to some extent. Within the structure of the flower itself, there are overlapping petals and under petals. And that's rather important to get at least that much of the structure correct. I've picked a petal on the very bottom that is being overlapped by others. And I'm doing a bit more detailing. And this is the petal I will start in with painting once I have the watercolor sketch somewhat more delineated. There's my sketch. Using most likely a number 6 brush here, I brush water into the outer portions of the petal and up to the edges of each of the lines of the folds. So I am planning to start out by working wet. The inner folds of this poppy are considerably darker as they move inward. So I'm starting with the outer folds first. I want the flow of the watercolor to be soft, and yet to preserve these intricate folds at the same time. So it's going to be a fun challenge. Starting out with a mixture of orange and a nice vermilion color, and following the contours of the folds, I'm sketching in wherever I see a darker line with the paint, which is then running a little bit because I had wet the paper. Sort of a trick to get the paper to the right wetness, because if it's too wet, it's just going to slop all over the place, and if it's not wet enough, it's going to look too liney. I've mixed in more vermilion and even added a little bit of red to deepen the color where I want it to be darker in the folds. The white areas, I'm really trying to keep them preserved for now. And fortunately, I achieved the right degree of wetness because the paint's not all running into them. Takes some time and practice and learning how to eyeball the degree of wetness of the paper to be able to control it to this extent. Now I'm coming in with a lot of light orange and plain water and trying to let the colors flow in between the dark and the light and some medium tones. I'm really laying my brush heavily with paint to put in as good and rich a dark color as I can at this point on the wet paper, knowing it will fade as it dries. So what I'm really doing is actually looking at the flower itself, trying to find the folds, and painting what I see. continuing to add more and more intense layers of paint into the wet paint. And then moving into the interior with folds that go in a slightly different direction because they're folding inward. And I'm trying to look at the lines in the folds and see exactly how they go. Having a live model to work from is really a treat. This flower was slightly backlit by some light, so the one inner edge had a nice translucency that was paler in color. The rest of it became darker with a tiny bit of the yellow-orange showing through. I'm sketching with the lighter color, and then I will come in with more darks as it folds inward. At this point, I'm adding some mauve to my oranges, as well as some alizarin crimson to get a darker color or variety of the orange. Because I want to show the place where the petal folds inward. And I try to continue that natural form of fold as it goes upward and inward, crosses over the bump of the bend, and then outward toward the edge. Because I want a continuity in the petal and I want it to look like it's natural. Considering that you're watching this sped up twice, the one petal took me at least a half an hour to do. Now I don't mind because I just love to paint. But it's not something that goes super quick because it just takes a lot of tweaking. I've moved on to the next petal that is also an under petal. And I'm putting the water into the areas between each fold again. And starting with the outer part of the petal. And again, my objective is to let the paint spread and flow and look beautiful and natural. And there's nothing like watercolor, in my opinion, to try to achieve this kind of flow. It just is unique. Orange and yellow folds are coming in, leaving my white spots again, and trying to conform with the actual folds of the petals on the flower I see right above in the vase to my right. Here I've mixed in some good bright cadmium red into my oranges and my vermilions, because this was a brilliant color and part of the flower petal. It was also a darker part. When you see me paint a line and it doesn't immediately start to spread or run, you can tell that the paint or the water underneath is starting to dry a little bit. So I have to be conscious of that to add more water if needed. And the water comes in to break up that hard edge. And so this will continue petal by petal. Thank you for watching. I hope you got some ideas out of my videos. I do appreciate your likes, and I hope you'll subscribe. You know, if you click on the bell and select all, you'll get a ring each time I post a new video. Your comments are welcome too, and there's links below that show many of the products that I personally use for you to check out. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next video.